We have the great opportunity to get an insight into the situation before Dimitri Avramopoulos has to go on. And I would like to start asking by the thing that you mentioned on your speech, that after Corona and other issues, that tourism is one of the first industries which strike on and succeed. So could you enlighten me and us, why is that? Why is tourism such?
It is not only related to COVID. Whenever there are crises or wars, the day after, there is a rapid recovery on everything. We have all read history. This is what happened after the Second World War. This is what has happened many times. Well, whether it is in a pandemic or a war, it's the same. Then people move forward. The industry is moving forward. Economy is going up. So it is true, and what we experience today in countries like Greece, for instance, and many other countries, it's a boom of tourist development. Not only in the field of visitors, but also in investments on tourism. I can tell you that Greece has become one of the most attractive countries right now for investments. There's a huge interest around the world. And I hope this will be positive, both for tourism and for our country, of course. But I'm not here to represent my country. I do it for the last 32 years. I'm here to share some experiences we have acquired throughout all these years. I have to pay tribute to my friend Abulfas, with whom we met, how many years? 24 years ago, when I visited for the first time Azerbaijan. He was Minister of Tourism. I was Minister of Tourism, and we established not only a good and strong friendship, but on the other hand, we shared some ideas of how can we move forward. Now, what's happening today? Answering to your question. It is exactly after not only COVID crisis, economic crisis, refugee crisis. The whole world is shocked by what has happened. So what I mentioned in my remarks is exactly that the aftershock period is always a great opportunity for people to move, to travel, and on this they can build better relations, not only among them, but also among countries, and where your sector, the private sector, can do a lot. We live in the era of human mobility, I told before. Right now, millions of people are on the move. What they want to do? What do they want to do? First of all, to discover new civilizations, new people, and to start building up from the bottom of the society better relations among people.
Thank you. Excellent. Still, when you're on the stage, so if I may direct the second question directly to you as well, before I talk with the others. This resilience, where does it actually come from? What are the reasons that why tourism industry is so flexible and agile to seize the opportunities? Where does it come from?
It is also the exit of all these impasses who are inherited by the past in general. Tourism is one of the main factors of growth. Tourism, on the other hand, is a tool in our hands in order to create a better, more cohesive and more inclusive society. I said in the beginning, during my remarks, and it was mentioned also by other speakers, that it is important to introduce tourism diplomacy. Because, as I told you when we are there, governments cannot do it very easily. The private sector can play a role. Countries, states suffer from what we can call state sclerosis, or whenever they have to make a decision to open doors of communication, better understanding and mutual respect. Upon that, culture is playing a very important role. Eco-friendly policies, they are directly linked to tourism. Tourism is defined by 3 factors: culture, development, which is also very important, and environment. This is the basis of the new doctrine for tourism. And I finish up by telling you something else that has to do with Europe. I was expecting to see my friend Gigi Kostas, who is the new Commissioner for Tourism and Transports. What Europe is lacking today, let's hope that they will make it in the future. Europe is lacking a common agenda on tourism. They all believed in the past that tourism is an area, a field of competition. With Abulfas and you, we were saying before, that it is exactly the opposite. It is an area where we can do things together without being influenced by other prejudices. There is no competition. For someone who is coming to visit, for instance, Mediterranean, he wants to see if he comes from Asia, from Latin America. He wants to visit at the same time the Vatican, Istanbul, Athens, and the pyramids. So the pie, from an economic point of view, is very big. So why don't we share? And I come to a very good example. I was telling that before. When I was Minister of Tourism, I had deployed the so-called tourism diplomacy. So I invited my friend, my colleague from Turkey, and they said, okay, let's do something in order to prove that finally the distances between the countries are not real, are not geographical, are psychological. I'm talking for all neighborhoods in the world. And we started organizing big events every 6 months, the same day, in Turkey and in Greece. In the morning, we were visiting on the island of Samos, and in the evening, just opposite to Kusadasi. And it worked. But through that, we managed to open new doors of communication. And of course, from an economic point of view, the Greek islands, this year, they received more than 2 million tourists from Turkey, who contributed in the growth and in the rise of the GDP of all these islands. But it is the same also at the governmental, at the states level. So coming back to Brussels, Europe has to move forward. Otherwise, there's no need to talk about common tourism policy, especially now that tourism is linked to all the other areas of our cooperation.
Thank you for an excellent answer. Maybe I can address the next question already.
But before, can I apologize? I have to catch a flight.
Yes.
And since we are talking about aviation security, but we have to talk also about passenger security. I don't have to be sorry. We'll miss your company. Thank you very much for having me here. Glad to see old friends and new friends, and count always on my support, especially in this very good initiative that you have undertaken during the last 20 years. Thank you very much for hosting me as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dimitri.
Can I take the souvenir? No.
Yes, my next question I'd address is to, because it's so great to have people who are having tens of years of experience in tourism. So you've experienced many of the crises and you've seen the resilience in this history. So could I ask, what was such that surprised even you, or has there been anything what surprised you how the industry evolved?
The most surprising thing in the nomination of tourism is that to travel, to feel, and to sense face-to-face contact is in the nature of the human being. We were talking about AI, about modern technologies and so on. By all means, they all are only the vehicles to stimulate the personal vision. Something to touch, to taste, to smell, to see, to have impression. And this is within the human being's nature. And this is the most important driving force of all these tourism activities. The other thing that in different times, in different periods of time, in different situations, modern informational systems gives even negative impact for the travelers. Sometimes our media is overestimating the difficulties in the small region, for example. Recently I was in Greece and all the media was shouting about this big demonstration against the government. I don't know what all roads will be closed. It took only 2 hours. The people in very correct and polite way were moving through the streets, and everything finished, nothing happened. But media was exaggerating that, And people were afraid to go to the street, to leave the hotels and whatever. So, but in spite of that, human being again is interested in seeing what's going on after that, and that's why a new, kinds of tourism like nomad tourism, extreme tourism, those who are interested in the previous difficult histories, tourism attraction, are starting to generate the movement. And this is non-stop movement. People will always travel, will always communicate with each other. And here I would like to say that one of the ideas of the today's meeting and the question which is surprising me, connected with the long history of the Silk Road. Today we are cheering Uzbekistan and they're supporting our event. We are also part of the Silk Road, not so connected, but still. But today, Silk Road is recovering. This Chinese idea of the one road, one belt, starting with the trafficking of the goods from China, Japan to Europe, through the Middle Asia, through the Caucasus and Turkey, avoiding difficult situational, regions, brings a new life to the Silk Road. What is this communication of Silk Road? Do we think only that people were traders bringing goods from here to there? The exchange of ideas, exchange of cultures, the innovations and knowledge of the existing in the different religions. Imagine yourself, before Columbus opened America, and before people start traveling by sea, the main road of goods and ideas were moving from China to Europe through this Silk Road until 15th century. Until 15th century, all exchange was there. Buddhism in China, Islamic world in the middle, Christianity in Europe. This exchange not only brought goods, they brought the ideas and better understanding of each other for the communication and the peaceful living. Of course, wars were happening, a lot of difficulties happening, but still the traveling were generating the ideas, the knowledge, the science, and the understanding. That's why I think that tourism will live forever.
Very nicely put. I believe that what you said is very much true, that the Silk Road was in the past and it was kind of faded away, but it came back, so it might come in not by years, but decades, centuries, and then come back again. So the wavelength might be sometimes longer, sometimes shorter. On that, actually, comes to me that, should I understand from this that what you mentioned, that tourism gets people together? So are there any conflicts caused by tourism, or is tourism predominantly something that provides positive things in life?
Every kind of activity of human being, from one point of view, is bringing privileges, from the other point brings difficulties. And of course, today we also come across with a lot of situations like over-tourism, difficulties concerned with the understanding each other and so on. But sometimes local communities are starting to be against the, big number of tourists coming. But still, I think that today modern industry is oriented very correctly to three very important directions. Like, SDGs announced by United Nations, these goals for the next couple of decades, and within that the tourism is SEM, SEG, so social, environmental, governance. In my understanding, to achieve these goals, you have to link it to the other word, responsible tourism. Because if there is no responsibility in arranging the tourism industry in general, let it be government, let it be private company, let it be international organization, without the responsibility, understanding that every tourist movement and innovation influencing not only the company or the government itself, but the local community too, and to count their interest and take them into consideration and to apply them to the general idea of the development is must, and it's very important. From this point of view, the SEG is requiring attentive attitude towards social communities involved in this process, with the environment, which is by all means the part of our life, or like a human being, and correct management. Unfortunately, not every time it's happening, but we must admit that the way is correct.
Yeah. If I address the additional thing to Lilla here, even though you mentioned that technology is not the closest thing to your heart, but maybe I put this on the table still, because it kind of makes me think of that. There are certain things still that with the social, ecological and environmental and government, that there's technology link even existing, that if we think about water consumption, so that's on tourism is one of a major water consumer on the planet. How do you see this, that what are the ways in tourism, how could we tackle this and take into consideration? Because I don't think that in the tourism we should be guilty, but we can feel responsible, and that's, I think, the great word. So, Lilla, how do you see that? What kind of elements are there in the government side, because of history from there, and business side? How do we build up the bridge between these two things?
It's a very complex question, actually. So I will start with the technology part. In my opinion, today, without it, we would be dead. Like, nobody would function, because we're so much used to having everything on our phones, from flights, booking accommodations, anything. Google Maps. Like, I haven't seen a person around me, if I walk in Brussels, who is a tourist and doesn't use their phone. They're walking like that. Without technology, we would not be able to live the way we live. And this is why both of you said that the word for this is responsible use of technology and responsible tourism. We have AI, which is a very big thing and new thing, and we actually don't particularly know what it is going to be in a year or two. But if we use its knowledge in a way that we can create positive impact for tourism, when it comes to data analysis, or when it comes to management of flights, of routes, of accommodation, it can be a huge advantage and a huge developing factor for the tourism industry. When it comes to more like the governing part, my boss a couple of months ago wrote an article on his webpage saying that we need a global pact for tourism. And he highlighted 3 things that really struck me. First of all, we need a common crisis management strategy. So when we have something going on, we can share our best practices or work together if it's needed. I think the COVID pandemic a couple of years ago showed us that we are very diverse, different economic backgrounds, different government backgrounds. You never know how and what way you can help each other. Second, you need to have a common development strategy to make sure that those countries who are a bit less developed and are actually developing at the same time, and when it comes to tourism, they are not very popular now, they will also get the chance to receive as many tourists as they can, based on the fact that they receive support money-wise or technology-wise. And with this, we can also alleviate part of the burden that we, let's say, put on those destinations that are very popular, that we have now the problems everybody knows with Barcelona this year. And the third is to create a sustainability strategy together. That how we develop our tourism strategies, how the governments and the government agencies for tourism can develop their strategies in a way that we make our tourism sustainable on the long run. Not only now, because now it's easy, but we have to think 5, 10, 15, 20 years in advance.
Thank you. It might be that, Abulfas, you have been in the tourism industry for quite a few years, but still there might be new things coming, and was mentioned by Lilla, the artificial intelligence. And we as human beings, we are always adjustable for, as you said, to different crises and opportunities, and one of the first industries to react is tourism. Would you like to answer the idea that what do you think that like artificial intelligence was mentioned in the previous panel, that how would it, can we utilize that somehow to speed up these things? Or because you have the history and this is something completely novel. Is this something that might come something?
Of course, at the time when we were starting business in tourism, my activity started in tourism business in 1992, 91. We established first company. During this collapse of the Soviet Union, newly independent states, we started Genma. Of course, everything was done by maximum fax, which was sending information to each other by telephone. The first ever this mobile telephone I saw in 93 in Dubai, when the gentleman was carrying like a suitcase with a big phone here, and everyone was gazing at them that it's a mobile phone. But nowadays everything changing. Of course, later on the tourism companies themselves started to generate the modern technologies to, let's say so, to facilitate the activity. I personally also use sometimes AI now. What happened? Was it bringing some damage to tourism or to our life? Google or Google Maps? It brought us another possibility to do something, to be faster, to know more, to get access to information and whatever. As I said at the beginning of our discussion, the human being will always be eager to touch, to see, and all these facilities, all these innovations, and all this technological, progress will be used only to bring better knowledge to the people and to move them to, again, to have a trip, to travel and so on. And tourism is the important thing because the topic of our discussion was concerning the resilience of tourism and how tourism is positively, involved in the recovery of the regions, whatever. If you will put the AI information now just to see how many examples we had, starting with the disasters, earthquakes, hurricanes, I don't know, COVID, latest time. Again and again, these modern technologies brought people to better communication with each other. And the companies, of course, today maybe there will be less requirement for the tourism companies in comparison what we had to do 20 years ago. But the companies which will be adapted to the new technologies will be also required, because not everyone is in capacity now to have access to the information as it is, possible today. We all are a little bit behind. Age differences, generation differences, whatever. Whatever can be done by the one young boy at 11, 12 years today on iPads or on PCs is much more than can be done by me or representative of my generation. all this brings fastening and getting more interest, arousing more interest and impact to the newly constructed minds of the human being. And it will grow. The potential of the human being brain is endless. And this technology is bringing the development of the knowledge. So I think that my opinion that these technologies will only facilitate and bring better solution for arrangement and for the organizing the travels and trips, and moreover will bring people for more responsible attitude towards the tourism business and industry itself. This is my opinion.
It's a valid and very good opinion. I think that we all share with that. What about Lilla? How do you see that? I addressed a similar type of question a bit to you as well. That how do you perceive that, not artificial intelligence, but as we see that, we learn that tourism is a very fast reacting industry. It seizes the opportunities, utilizes technology, one of the first in wars, and probably in the future it will be the same as well. What do you think that, what kind of things and how fast-paced it will be in the future? Because we know that from COVID, the recovery time was very, very short. So what might we expect? Because it's clear that there is currently turmoil going on in the world, in Europe, outside Europe, and people are afraid or might be concerned about things, but they already see the opportunity in that. So what is happening with the speed? How fast are we going to react? Are we building up the history in the same way as in the past?
I think we're kind of building up the same history, just with like speed 5, as you said. Literally, I say something now, and 3 minutes later, it can be on any of the web pages. Like, the information flow is crazy, and it's a good and a bad thing at the same time. Coming from a younger generation, I cannot even imagine my life without technology. Although, as I said, I'm not a big tech person. I was quite reluctant to use ChatGPT for over 1.5 years. Now I'm a frequent user of it because I realized how good it can actually be and how useful it can be. But when it comes to technology and tourism, it's a very good thing, and we can adapt because of it very, very fast. But one thing that came to my mind while both of you were speaking is that if I just think from my hometown where I come from, which is a 30,000 people town in south of Hungary, which is very famous for its wine, so we have tourism because of that. But most of the shops, the wineries, are owned by families, and they are still run by the older generation of the families, whom are not very much familiar with technology. So because of that, they are not very much keen on digitalizing their or like getting a web shop, for instance. If you want to get a wine, you have to go and get it or find a supermarket where they sell it, but those wines are not sold in every supermarket in Hungary. Or when it comes to bookings, many of them not find on booking.com, or many accommodation are not found on Airbnb. You have to Google them separately or find them on Google Maps, which creates them a disadvantage just because they're not very much educated when it comes to technology. And it's not about ignorance, because I've been trying to teach my family members who are above 60, 70, and I can give them my phone, and over half of them is going to tell me, like, what do you want me to do with this? I don't want to learn it. I don't have to learn it. I was good for X years until now. And this can create a disadvantage. And this is something that can be overcome, but by only bringing in the younger generations, which comes with time. And I think that if I think of the other side of technology and tourism, we really have to pay attention also to data protection. Here in Europe, we have GDPR, but what if I book with an intermediary from the US or from Asia? How am I secure that my date of birth, my residence, or any of my data is not going to be leaked out to someone who might use it for not so good purposes? We have to create a kind of scheme on this, because technology advances, it brings us a lot of advantages and makes us think faster and go faster, but we also have to think of the negative side of it. What are the side causes that it can bring us? And what are the things that we can do against it to make sure that we can use tourism and travel as a leisure, as work, but just as safe as before, as when you just walked into the tourism company and booked your accommodation to Egypt for a week with your family. Now, who does that? Nobody, or 1% of the population.
I still know people who do that, and maybe you too do, but the thing is that, yes, that's true. The life has changed very much during the time, and I think Abulfas has even more experience on that. I think that because we have the topic on the resilience, I would be really interested, because there were issues. We have invented new types of tourism. I mean, we had the Chernobyl when I was a rather young child, and they have tourist trips to visit the exploded nuclear power plant or in the environment. What will be, you have had experience surely of many different types of innovations, and this innovation is part of the resilience, that they did something unexpected maybe. What comes to your mind?
As I told you that the human nature requires these trips and feelings, it is always like that. I will bring you another example. Of course, it was not good advice to those who are going to see outcomes of Chernobyl tragedy. The same happened in Japan, in Fukushima, and a lot of other places. But again, tourism assisted all these, dangerous and disastrous events to be overcome much quicker, because the humans, when they are going there, they learn, they start to assist each other, bringing some, understanding of the situation. In general, understanding is very important thing from my point of view. And this is the matter of the cultural sense of tourism. Everyone knows that we had a very big problem concerned with our neighborhood country, 30 years occupation of the territories. Now it is finished, this conflict. We are coming to the peace agreement with our neighbors. But what happened in Karabakh today? This is the fastest growing region in the country nowadays. All the community assisting to bring a new way of life to these 30 years unlived territories. And first steps were to promote the place for living for those who want to come. So investments came to the hotel construction, food supplyment, and people started to go there, to stay there, to develop the other activities and so on. So tourism was opening the road, infrastructure, road construction, of course, all this connected to each other. In general, tourism, we must not understand tourism like something separately taking, let's say, activity. Everyone who is involved in these exchanges may be considered the part of the tourism industry. Formerly, the World Tourism Organization calculated a so-called satellite account. Satellite account means that the number of the people who are involved in the services provided for the tourism. And it was totally different approaches. Some countries counted 9 people, 10 people. The others was calculating 36 people or 40 people, even taking into account those who were breeding the chicken at the farm to bring the egg to the table of the tourist. So all of these activities are connected to each other. Road construction, transportation, aviation, we were talking, medical services, everything connected with the human being activity and his way is connected to the tourism industry, can be connected. That's why maybe from the point of view of resilience, from the point of view of recovering of the territories and the recovers from the disasters and from the crises, maybe tourism is the force which attracting the activity of so many involved professions to the movement. And I think this is the very important role of tourism. The other thing that tourism and resilience may be connected through the other idea. It is connected with the peaceful force of tourism. Whoever is traveling to the other country never thinks about struggling with the place where he's going. The lack of information brings misunderstanding, and misunderstanding brings to the conflicts. When tourist is going somewhere, he is learning a little bit more about this place, and he more or less comes to the feeling of certain respect or belonging to the piece of this land and whatever. Wherever you go, when you go to the, I know numerous representatives of the different nationalities and religions which are going to the castles for the churches and whatever to see how it's looking like a heritage site or whatever, and within they accept it. A lot of people coming to the Muslim countries trying to understand what's going in these mosques, how is the procedures going, and start to understand what's going on. With this understanding through the travel, people start to be more educated. Of course, there are different travelers, only those who are coming for the leisure at the beach and whatever. But still, even for them, knowing that, understanding what is the nature of the place he went is important. What we know, let's put the question like that. What we know about the country before we go there, and what we know about the country after we come. So the number of the positions which are coming like an outcome of the trip is much wider than before. Even if you use AI, if you even use this Google Maps, whatever, the natural, personal vision gives totally different impact to the understanding of the place. So this is the strength of tourism, and this is the why tourism is one of the moving forces of the recovery of the territories and the lands after crises and the disasters.
It seems to me that tourism is like a mandatory glue between different industries, between different people. It takes you from different cultures, and it's always just adding on. It's not really taking away, even though it's sometimes quite criticized. What I like to say about this, because you have experience in addressing to Lilla, and that will be the last question here. We're finalizing this panel. You have context of you've been living in different countries yourself, and tourism in these countries where you've been living are slightly different, and people see different attractions. But how is it the resilience over there in those cultures where you've seen that and where you lived in? How do you perceive, are there cultural differences, and what kind of cultural differences there are, despite of the thing that there's a superglue called tourism between them?
Indeed, there are cultural differences. If I just look at the fact that when I go to a Southern European country, or if I go to a Northern European country, people will be completely different. In the South, we all know people tend to be more warm, more welcoming. And if you go to a restaurant, they will come to you right away. They will help you with whatever you want. Whereas the more northern you go, it's a bit more formal. As I experienced, maybe some people would think otherwise. But for instance, also if in Hungary I go somewhere, most of the time the waiter comes there, they are very polite, they ask for me, but it's like, so you don't have that chit chat that you would have with someone in Spain or in Italy, because that is how their culture is. They're very talkative, they're very loud, they're very open. And also when it comes to how you handle tourists, well, southern countries with the sea, they are very much used to having tourists there all the time, maybe a bit too much in summertime. And you have different type of tourist activities. There most people go to just lay on the beach, enjoy the sun, enjoy the good food, good weather and the wines, sangria, for instance. Whereas if I would just think of my country in Hungary, you don't have a beach. We have Lake Balaton, which is the biggest lake in Central Europe, but that's not the sea. It's not why you go there. You go there because the nature is nice, because there are nice activities, nice festivals. You do climbing, you do trekking, or you just do a road trip in a caravan with your friends or family. And these two types of, and it's just only two types of the tourism activities that I listed, they require completely different approaches, how you handle these, and what kind of, let's say, management you have on that. And in my opinion, having, for instance, a common knowledge sharing or data space where tourism destinations could coordinate or share their best practices or talk about what kind of problems they have or how they could improve their resilience would be extremely useful in this case. And with the technology, we could make it this easily. Just create a hub and there you go. You have everything accessible.
Thank you. I think our time for the panel is getting short. I could still, though, use the opportunity for 1 minute question for Abulfas, if you might. I'm so fascinated because I'd like to hear from the history and all these things and that. And I asked it already before that, what have been the greatest resilience, what you've seen in people. But I believe that you have explored some surprises as well. That something that, oh, it turned out so fast into a new thing. So is there something such has happened that when a crisis became like a tourist attraction?
You know, I will give you one political example. I lived and I worked in the former Soviet Union too. The crisis, the collapse of the Soviet Union, the country started to be independent. The economy stopped. You know, in the Soviet Union, everything was connected to each other. To produce one thing in one country, had to get supply from the other. It was linked to each other, and everything collapsed. Very difficult time. But what was the most important thing? People get access to free traveling. Before that, during the communist regime, to go abroad was an experience whom not everyone could manage to pass through. Suddenly, everything opened. Suddenly, people started to travel, to go, to see, to bring something which were not possibly could be taken by the government and supplied from the state, and the life recovered. And I think that the crisis of political crisis of the collapse of the Soviet Union brought resilience to the citizens of these countries and made tourism prosperous and growing in a very huge speed. I can't even give you the figures definitely how big was the volume of tourism during the Soviet time in Azerbaijan, but starting with 98, 97, until today the growth is immense. And I think that this is the example when the crisis is bringing prosperity to the one of the fields of activity. So this is one of the examples.
Here. Thank you on that. Thank you, dear panelists. This was a great discussion. I think we all learned new things and got a new viewpoint on the resilience, on the how tourism actually is one of the first movers in the different industries, and shows the glue between people, and that tourism is actually probably one of the driving forces in even other industries. Thank you.
Thank you.